To assess your qualifications through the Medical Board of Australia, you need to follow a specific process if you are an overseas trained medical practitioner and wish to work in Australia. The Medical Board of Australia is responsible for ensuring that overseas doctors meet the required standards to practice in Australia. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to assess your documents through the Medical Board of Australia. To assess your qualifications through the Optometry Council of Australia and New Zealand (OKNZ), the assessment by the Medical Board of Australia is necessary if you're an overseas trained optometrist. If you want to practice medicine in Australia or New Zealand, you need to be registered with the Medical Board of Australia. OKNZ is the designated body responsible for assessing the qualifications of optometrists from overseas to determine if they meet the standards required to practice in Australia and New Zealand. Can also be a requirement. Here's a step-by-step guide on how to assess your documents if you're looking to live and work in Australia as a medical practitioner. The assessment by OKANZ serves two main purposes. Determine eligibility for the Medical Board of Australia. To practice optometry in Australia or New Zealand, before applying you need to have your qualifications ensure you meet the following eligibility through the appropriate regulatory authorities. You must have an overseas medical qualification that is recognized as equivalent to an Australian medical degree. Is also used as part of the process. You must have relevant clinical experience in medicine after to work as an optometrist in Australia or New Zealand. If English is not your first language, before you begin the assessment, you may need to provide evidence of English ensure that you meet the following eligibility criteria, such as IELTS, medical degree, or optometry qualifications. Then gather required documents. You should have an overseas qualification before starting the assessment. E.g., you will need to collect the following documents: equivalent work experience, a copy of your medical degree or you should have relevant official transcripts showing the subjects or courses you completed during your medical program during the assessment. Documents English that detail your clinical experience and practice. If English is not your employer letters and reference you may be required to provide a copy of your English language or other identification via recognized tests, evidence like of English proficiency or required, and certified translations if your documents are not in English. To apply for the assessment, follow these steps. Visit the Medical Board of Australia website. Create an account through the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency online portal. Fill in the online application form, upload all the required documents, and pay the application fee. After submitting your application and documents, the Medical Board of Australia will review your qualifications and experience. The process may include primary source verification, where ACPRA may verify your medical qualifications with the issuing institutions to confirm their authenticity, and comparative assessment, where the MBA will compare your overseas qualifications to the Australian standards for medical education. If your qualifications and experience meet Australian standards, you will be granted registration. If they don't meet the required standards, you may need to take additional steps, such as completing further education or examinations. The outcomes of the assessment process can include full registration, limited registration, provisional registration, or a negative assessment. There are different pathways for doctors who hold overseas qualifications to gain registration with the Medical Board of Australia. The standard pathway is for doctors whose qualifications are recognized as equivalent to an Australian medical degree. The competency-based pathway is for doctors who may need to complete additional training or assessments. The specialist pathway is for doctors who are seeking recognition as a specialist. If your qualifications are not directly recognized, you may need to take additional steps, such as AMC examinations or supervised practice. If you are seeking specialist recognition, you may need to undergo a specialist assessment through the Royal Australasian Colleges or equivalent bodies. Once you receive a positive assessment outcome, you can apply for registration with the Medical Board of Australia. The type of registration you receive will depend on your qualifications and experience. If you are an overseas trained doctor and intend to migrate to Australia, you may also need to apply for a skilled migration visa based on your positive assessment and registration with the Medical Board of Australia. If you have questions or need help during the process, you can contact the Medical Board of Australia for support through their website. The Medical Board of Australia assessment process is essential for overseas trained doctors wishing to practice in Australia. The process involves submitting your medical qualifications, professional experience, and supporting documents for review. If you meet the Australian standards, you will be granted registration to practice in Australia. If not, you may need to undergo further education, exams, or supervised practice. Ensure that you understand the assessment requirements, complete your application thoroughly, and follow up with any additional steps required.